Good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar on mining by Terrafirma. My name is Bronwyn Townsend and I'm part of the marketing team here at InfoTrack. I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Backhouse from Terrafirma. Tom founded Terrafirma 2 years ago and is well versed in providing educational and interesting webinars. Today's subject will look at the risks mining has created across the UK and which areas are most at risk. We anticipate the webinar will take around an hour, and if you have any questions during the session, please do type them in the box. So Tom, many thanks for your time today. I'll now pass control over to you to begin the webinar.
Good morning everybody. Thank you very much Bronwyn for introducing me, and I'm just waiting for the controls. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning and taking some time out of your day. Hopefully everything we're going to go through today is going to educate you to something that's been around for a long time as a potential environmental risk in the UK property sector, UK built environment sector, but it isn't really something that up until now has been given a level of appreciation that it deserves in risk assessment and impact assessment. So I think it's hopefully I will educate you today. I'm here to educate you. I'm not here to kind of tell you our services. It's here to educate you to something that is a really important, becoming much more so a really important part of the conveyancing process, but not just the conveyancing process, also the financial risk, insurance, valuation, development, planning, and so on. Terrafirma, as Bronwyn alluded to, I founded Terrafirma to provide these solutions to ground stability and mining risk assessment. Ground stability has been painted with this brush of big buffer zones, lack of interpretation, generalized answers, and sort of conclusions, and risk is very often missed with regards to ground stability. And that's just purely down to the fact that nobody, no commercial body or academic body has gone out and aggregated data, new and exciting data sources, and put it together with professional opinion to come up with a really good, solid solution to this as an environmental risk. We have grown very, very quickly over the last 2 years into being the leading nationwide provider in mining risk solutions, and growing into the ground stability side of things very, very quickly as well. Myself, I'm a geologist first and foremost, so that's why comes from me today will be on an educational format. Hopefully I can walk you through just a couple of models and case studies to kind of try and increase your awareness to why this is a problem, and why you should be, as conveyancers or whoever professionals within the built environment, you should be looking at this as something in a lot more detail in your due diligence and for your clients. So I would like you to kind of keep these questions in your head as we go through this, and then we can revisit them at the end, and we can hopefully make a note of them. If you've got any questions about these, then please make a note of them and come back to me or Bronwyn or whoever at the end of the presentation, and we'll look to go through them with you. So what do you believe the risks are to you and your firm? What liability could you face regarding UK mineral extraction and the risks and impacts around it in the conveyancing process, etc.? What do you believe the risks are to your client at the moment, based on what you know at the moment? What data, information, or interpretation do you feel you do not have easily available to you, if you know you don't? And if this information wasn't made available, so going through what we're going to talk about today, would the advice to your client change? And I can almost guarantee it should and would at the end of this this presentation. So we'll look at the history and the industry of UK mineral extraction and why it's a problem. So I'll be very enthusiastic and concise about that. Try and put it into some real-world case studies. Look at the impact, how it might impact you and or your client, and how then we now can identify the risk and how it's changed, how how this evolution and risk assessment over the last 17 years in environmental issues. So I mean, as I see it, in 2000 you could not get a comprehensive risk assessment around contaminated land. However, now it's part of the standard conveyancing process, the standard planning and development process. So why is that? So why have we gone from data to interpretation to it being mandatory to it being understood, and people being able to become aware to it? Before 2007, you couldn't get predictive flood modelling. It didn't exist. There was no such thing as having flood modelling and flood risk assessment in a conveyancing report. So it's the same as ground stability. This is the last of the environmental risks that to be really covered by a professional, by somebody that understands the ground, who can link up all different parts of ground stability and provide you and your client with a fully informed, comprehensive risk assessment to make sure that you and your client are covered when they come to buying, and they're informed when they come to buying their property or land. So this question is a really important question. It kind of sums up exactly why I do this in the first place. I did 150 hours worth of CPD for professionals across the UK last year, and this question always starts my webinars and CPD sessions. And the reason being is because it sums up what over the last 30 years, why and how we do mining risk assessment in the UK. This works a lot better in an interactive setting because I can hear and I can react to where you're talking and your questions. But usually I would ask this question, and the most common answer is always coal. We associate the word mining with coal, and that's very. It's because it's relatively fresh in the memory. It's because we still see the legacy of it today in bodies like the Coal Authority, in local authority information. Even still, big coal mines have only started to close down in the last few years, and the last one, Callingate closed down last year on Thursday. So relatively fresh in memory. So that's why we have this. Coal industry has been running throughout running strongly all the way through the last century, and the memory and the industry of that industry is still very fresh. The other part of the country that we associate with mining, we often associate with mining, is again Cornwall and tin. And again, that's because of this visible legacy that we can see at the surface. So therefore, it makes sense for us to believe there's problems under the ground, and a series of very high-profile, collapses and impact over the last 30 years has led to that area of the country being completely, it's a normal thing, completely normal thing for planners, developers, conveyancers, surveyors, lenders to accept and understand and act on the risk in that area of the country. Now, I worked in Cornwall. I started my career in Cornwall working for a company there that provides that sort of risk assessment to property. Now, I couldn't understand while I was working there why that level and that process of risk assessment in the property purchase process was not applicable everywhere else in the country. Why on earth do we not do that level of mining risk assessment in planning, development and conveyancing in London, or in on the south coast, or in Bristol, or in Cardiff, or in Bath, or in Matlock in the Peaks, or Liverpool, or Manchester? All of these places around the country, I could not understand it. So that's where Terrafirma was founded from. It was founded to provide those solutions because the lack of awareness to mineral extraction, historical, present and planned, was quite staggeringly poor in terms of the lack of diversity, the lack of awareness of the diversity of mineral extraction, where, how, what might be the impact to you and your client. So that's kind of what, how it all began. If you look on the picture, the map on the right, Cornwall obviously very densely packed with red, which is every single location of recorded non-coal sites in the UK. But as you can see, there are just as densely packed red clusters of red all across the country. You might notice that London is very, very densely packed with red. An area of the country that we do not associate the word mining with. We don't associate London with underground mining, but yet London is heavily mined. I'm not talking about Crossrail and underground and the tube. I'm talking about underground mining that has had and will continue to have a severe impact on the surface for property and development. And I'll take you through a couple of case studies. Coal mining, the big grey areas that cover lots of the north of the country and around Cardiff and Bristol, are where we know coal mining is taking place. But coal mining is happening in other areas outside of those coal fields, which haven't historically been picked up by a report that used to do as a standard, the quantity INM. So we'll go through why and how Terrafirma have evolved mining risk assessment and why it's really, really important for you to understand. So there's two parts to this. The first one is to take you through a model of why mineral extraction has happened, why it happened, how diverse it is, how much of it there is, and hopefully apply that to some case studies today in the real world that you will have seen in the news and so on, and you will continue to see this in the news. And the second is to kind of take you through a journey as to why we're here, why Terrafirma can provide this level of information to you when historically mining was thought of as something that was pretty difficult to predict, interpret, and so on. But we've moved a huge way forward in providing that information to you. So mineral extraction has happened throughout this country, throughout the UK, for 2,500 years. We have one of the longest and most diverse mineral extraction histories on the planet. We are a tiny little island nation, but yet we managed to conquer the world with the British Empire, mainly because of the resources we had available to us under our feet in this country. This model applies to any settlement and any village, town and city in the UK, any village, town and city. And the first way I wanted to imagine it is that if you go to the top of the tallest building in any settlement in the country and look out the window, and you're in 1904, you look out the window, everything in front of you has come from beneath the ground. If it's the tiles on the roofs, the glass in the windows, the ceramic mug you're drinking your coffee out of, the glass you're drinking your water out of, everything, the bricks in the wall, everything has come from beneath the ground. And in that period, and prior to the 20th century, and even well into the 20th century, the minerals came from beneath the ground within the vicinity of where you're stood. Town cities industry grew around where the minerals were available to them. It's not cost effective to go hundreds of miles up to the north of the country to get the minerals you need and the resources you need. So towns and cities grew hand in hand and side by side mineral extraction. And if I take you through this model, in 1800, these mineral resources, there's lots and lots and lots of them. We have 60 plus mineral resources in the country that have been mined from underneath the ground. At this point, there's no demand for mineral extraction or resources, so it doesn't happen. There's nothing. It's just all the minerals are still there. There's no demand. There's no extraction. You fast forward to the centre of the Industrial Revolution, and there's a huge demand for mineral extraction. And we'll take London as an example. So London grew using the brick and the chalk and the bricklaying and the chalk that was within the Greater London Borough and the Greater London area. Chalk was required as a building material, and so was bricklaying. So all the land and manorial rights were purchased in this time and registered in this time. So the separate and different mining companies, hundreds and hundreds of mining companies, and extensive surface and then underground mining lasted 50, 30, 40, 50, 60 years through into the early 20th century. And what happened is, at this point, the demand for resources for industry and development made what happened. The towns and cities grew around and side by side this extraction industry. That's how they were, literally side by side. So where the resources were, the town grew next to it. And that's how, if you look historically back through time at any settlement in the country, that's how they grew. That is how they grew. So this is what I'm trying to say here is that it's not everywhere. Mining and mineral extraction doesn't happen. We're not Swiss cheese and we're all going to suddenly fall down holes. But there are parts and sectors and places within towns, cities and villages all across the country where this is just an absolutely normal thing. This is where, where the minerals that built the rest of the town and city are and were taken out of the ground from. And when they were taken out of the ground, there were voids and there were pits left. So they were voids, and they could be mine shafts, shallow underground workings, deep underground workings, etc. Or they could be pits, quarries that were backfilled over the next 120, 130 years. So if you imagine we skip forward to 1960, the chalk mines or wherever the mine workings are left completely derelict. The memory of that industry is being forgotten. So the town grows, but at this point, the 50s and 60s post-war, the ground was left derelict and the town grew around the area problem. There was still enough of a memory of industry to not build there. So it becomes backfilled with contaminated land. And the important point to bring up is that all three of the environmental risks, ground stability, contaminated land and flood, are interlinked. Those links between them have never been explored in the risk assessment process, and that's something that Terrafirma is very, very strong on providing that information to you. Contaminated land backfills 80+% of all contaminated land in the country. It comes from and has its roots in historical mineral extraction, which for a very simple reason. If you've got landfill or you've got contaminated land, it's likely that it's in a pit that was originally there to take minerals out of the ground and resources out of the ground. So at this point, they're unused, they're backfilled, and they're forgotten about until eventually the 80s, 90s, all the way to the present day. And this again is applicable to any settlement in the country. Development gets closer and closer and closer to the problem until eventually it gets built on it with little or no ground investigation, because at that point in time they had no idea what the problems might be beneath the ground and how they might affect future generations and the property in the future, until eventually it was built on top of that problem. And in cases all over the country, every single town or city or village has a case of development on top of mineral extraction in the last 50 years that has caused an issue. There is case studies and sinkhole case studies and substance case studies and impact case studies in every village, town and city in the country. This is not something that has been around, that has just suddenly appeared on the radar. This has been on the radar for the last 30 years. The problems have been just increasing because of this. The media love them, so the visibility to the problems has been increasing. And we do have increased rainfall events now, which do trigger them. The other big trigger is, two big triggers: developing on bad land, which we continue to do, and with this government push of brownfield development, it will only see more problems. And the second thing is that we have an aging utilities infrastructure, which is triggering and causing faulty water mains and faulty sewage lines that are actually triggering these events. We've seen just one in the last 2 weeks in Sudbury, where a sinkhole has opened up in a major road, causing incredibly severe impact on the local community. And the sinkhole keeps opening up because they haven't looked at what the problem is. The problem is a quite substantial chalk mine underneath that road, but they've just filled it with concrete and hoped for the best. And 2 weeks later, it's sank again. This is something, chalk mining is something that is a really big problem in the UK, and it covers the entire south and east of England, which historically was an area that we did not think mining happened in. We didn't think it happened, so we didn't do the right risk assessment processes. But now we do need to do that. And this is what I'm here to tell you. This is something that's so important. We need to start understanding the ground, providing this information to our clients, no matter what professional you are in the built environment. To put it into some context, this is London, and this is the southeast of London. Within the Greater London area, and we're just within the extent of the M25, there are 572 sand and gravel pits. 12 are active. Over 80% are built over. 509 chalk mines. 75% of these are dean holes, which are these very small, almost always unrecorded. They're only recorded when they collapse, which is a bit scary. 60% of the south and eastern area of Greater London is suitable for further unrecorded dean holes. Now, that's a terrifying, that's a really scary fact, considering London, southeast London, is one of the most expensive places to buy and develop land, some parts in Europe. 221 clay pits. 1 in 4 of those clay pits are suitable for the unrecorded underground mining of chalk, and potentially up to 55 unrecorded chalk mines within the Greater London area, where geological conditions are suitable. This is a map of the southeast of England, and as you can see, the green is chalk, the red is iron, and there's lots of brick clay, and the blue is sand and gravel. So places like Maidstone, Redhill, Godstone, Lewisham, Dartford, Rochester, Gillingham, Canterbury, Dover, Horsham, Crawley, Brighton, all of these places are heavily mined, but yet there's no such thing as a standard mining search or standard ground conditions report that exists until Terrafirma that provides the information and cover you need as a conveyancer. So, it's just about changing perception and increasing awareness of this problem. So that's the kind of history around it and how we have this legacy, why we have a legacy. I'm hoping that's kind of put it into perspective for you. But mineral extraction is, yes, okay, we've had a century's worth of mineral extraction, which has left a legacy on the ground we build on today. But we also have a growing impact from present and planned mineral extraction. And this is incredibly important, and I really hope you take this away today. So they're all interlinked. because the resource that underlies it, the geology and the mineral resource underlies it, is all there. That's what is the trigger, and that's what's the demand for the mineral for extraction to happen. So they're all interlinked. And present and planned mineral extraction, there is nothing in any report that you or any search that you currently purchase for your client that provides information on this and the impact it might have, including mines and minerals, mineral planning permissions, present planning impacts, present industry and actual extraction of the minerals, the impact that might have on clients and the enjoyment of the property, the value of land, etc. None of that information is provided in any search that you do, and that has to change. That's something that we pride ourselves on. We provide this proactively across the country within a report that covers every single part of mining and mineral extraction risk. So we'll take you through a couple of case studies then. Hopefully they'll help make you understand a bit more. So the impact from past mineral extraction is quite bluntly subsidence and collapse, and this thing that the media like to call sinkholes. We are seeing huge record numbers of them in the last 12 to 18 to 3 years, 12 to 18 months in the last 3 years in particular. We've seen quite literally hundreds of subsidence events that have been captured by local news and in academic work, and there is a risk to life, there's no doubt. There's 11 people have actually died since 1930 in mining-related sinkholes in this country. So it's not something that hasn't taken life. Fingers crossed it doesn't take any more. But as you will see from some of these case studies and these pictures I'm about to show you, it's staggering really that they actually haven't affected life more. But in terms of the homeowner financial liability, the potential liability that you may face, and the diminution or the increase in value of land is severely impacting, really severely. And I can really, I can put that into context now with a couple of case studies. So every single one of these sinkholes that you're seeing on the news, they're all caused by historical mineral extraction. They happen all over the country. None of them happen in any one place. They're all caused by different types of mineral extraction, and they all happened in the last 12 to 18 months. There's no, these aren't over the last decade. These are happening right here, right now. We've had 5 mining-related sinkholes in January alone this year. They're almost every week. There's one happening almost every single week, and they're causing impact to industry. They're causing impact to infrastructure, local communities, local authorities, and most importantly, of course, the people that own the property. Now, no other environmental risk has as much of an impact on property value, and it's because of its association with that risk and that problem that's opened up. So, and in terms of the displacement of people, in terms of the impact and the quiet enjoyment and living in that property, ground stability and these sinkhole collapses have massive and severe impact on them living in that house and living in that area. This is the Fontmell Close St Albans sinkhole that opened up on October the 1st, 2015. That sounds like a long time ago, which, to be fair, it's 18 months ago now. But in terms of its impact, it's still right now ongoing. Severe impact on homeowners in the country, in that area. So collapse opened up. It was directly caused by underground, unrecorded chalk mining in St Albans. Now, St Albans historically has never again been associated with mining, but yet it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that there's lack of awareness to it. So what happened was it took 14+ months for this problem to be remediated, and it took 14+ months for 5 or 4 households and 4 families to actually return to their homes. It's a long time. The insurance actually only paid out for 2 weeks worth of alternative accommodation. The road had to be rediverted through people's back gardens. There's a house, number 14, which is just literally about 20 meters away from this collapse, that was in completion at the time of the collapse. So they moved in to this property, spending over £600,000 on this house, just 14 days after this collapse opened up, having to live there 12 months later, still not being able to drive to their property for over 12 months later. This is just a case study. This is just one of all the ones I showed you before on the screen in the last 12 months that have been affecting property in this way. And like I said before, the most important thing is, and I'll explain this in more detail later, is that none of these problems and none of those sinkholes that were picked up on the page before would have been picked up by a report or search that you currently provide your client with. So an environmental report or a local authority search or any search that you do would not have picked up these problems. There's no information available, there's no risk assessment, there's no practical site-specific conclusions, recommendations that you're getting. So this would have been entirely missed. And that's one, very, very scary, and two, it is part negligence on the part of the developers, the professionals working in the built environment sector. So number one, not inform the client and the lender of this risk, but also just to ensure that the client has got everything they need to understand the risk in that site and make a decision on whether they want to move in and what can be done to remediate or mitigate that risk. In this case, prior to October 2015, this was an easily identifiable problem. It is a severely high risk of future subsidence, almost an inevitable risk of future subsidence and collapse. And lots of indicators within the immediate vicinity of the site that this would have happened. This is the model we can apply to it, and this is the model we can apply to the whole of the southeast of England. And why? There's one thing to take away from today, it's that chalk mining is as much of a risk to property and land than coal and Cornwall and tin combined. But yet, it isn't mentioned in the Conveyancing Handbook, it isn't mentioned in standard legal practice and policy notes or planning legislation, and this is something that Terrafirma working very, very hard. We've recently just had an article launched with MFG, Mortgage Finance Gazette, which is explaining this model in detail. And this is something now, you're going to hear a lot more about. You're not going to go away from this webinar and just never hear about this as a problem again. This is something that you will hear as an issue, and we will, something that's just going to continue to evolve into the conveyancing and planning and development process. So where clay is extracted on top of chalk, chalk is mined almost always unrecorded beneath the clay pit because it's used in a conjunction with brickmaking industry. 100 years goes by, the void is capped with wood and backfilled with contaminated land. It's eventually built on, drainage patterns that are changed, the wood inevitably rots, and obviously when that wood rots, like an hourglass, it collapses. This could be due to increased rainfall events or faulty water mains, like it was in the case of St Albans. This model applies, like I said, across London, Reading, Norwich, High Wycombe, across most of Kent. Really, really important that this is understood. This is also what caused the recent Sudbury sinkhole. So hopefully take this away and understand this model needs to be applied. The other one, and the slightly different, is this is coal. Now coal, so we've got lots of different minerals extracted all over the country. Chalk is a big problem, but also lead in the Peak District, limestone, not just in West Midlands, but across the country. Coal is something that we already understand is a problem because the Coal Authority have historically done a very good job of providing information, investigation and remediating our legacy of coal mining. So we have a standard coal mining search called the CONT 29M, which historically has never been challenged as a report. It's always just been a standard in the conveyancing process and in planning and in development. Terrafirma have challenged this for the first time in this report and provided an alternative, an equivalent and an alternative that is finally providing you as conveyancers with the interpretation you need of the data. So it includes all of the Coal Authority data, but the interpretation is so key because it doesn't miss the risk. Now this is an example of just that, a case study of just that. So brand new housing, another thing to take away from today, new build does not equal no risk. Because of that model I took you through before, until Terrafirma, the lack of information and interpretation was applicable to property that's still being built today. So there's new build does not equal no risk. It's really important that if you're doing commercial or new build or plot work, this is still something you have to pick up on and take away in the conveyancing process. These properties were built literally 12 months ago, and just 6 months ago, the families that had just moved in were asked to leave and were relocated permanently 2 weeks ago when those properties that they bought for £200,000 plus were demolished, only 12 months after they were built. This is a case study of many, so there's lots and lots of these case studies I can take you through if you're interested, across the country where new builds are falling down our legacy of mineral extraction. In this case, the homeowners were financially covered under NHBC. So there was cover provided to the homeowners, but in terms of the impact they had, you cannot sum up how severe that was for these homeowners moving in and having to be permanently relocated just 6 months after purchasing their dream home. It can't actually put that into words how much of an impact that is. This is a case study of where the workings, the development was built on an area of land that was classed as probable shallow coal mine workings by the COM29M and the Coal Authority. Now, the Coal Authority, like I said, are very, very good at what they do, but they do not have records that show any coal mining or little coal mining before the late 19th century. So before that, and the scary thing about that is that it misses the height of the Industrial Revolution, where most of the coal mining in this country actually took place. Now, the older the mine workings, and this applies to all resources, mineral resources and all mining, the older the mine workings, the closer they are to the surface, and therefore, the more poorly they were remediated. So you've got shallow workings, poorly remediated, and not looked after. So they were just left, abandoned is the best word to describe them. Now, probable shallow coal mine workings usually means that there are shallow coal mine workings there. In this case, and importantly, the COM29M just provides information that on the data the Coal Authority hold. It does not provide an interpretation of the gaps between that data. And that is why risk is constantly missed in the conveyancing and development process. So in this case, it was missed, but the simple interpretation of this was that a coal outcrop which ran directly beneath the outcrop, beneath the site, was mined along its outcrop in a process called bell pits. One of the bell pits had actually potentially already collapsed on that site, which is highlighted by the circle I've shown you. And just to the left was a quarry, which in the face of the quarry is potentially galleries and levels driven into the quarry to access shallow and declines in the quarry to access shallow coal mine workings directly beneath the site. Later proven by borehole records that identified the voids beneath the site of this development. Now, this was missed on the initial report that was undertaken in the late 90s, but and then eventually to develop on it in the last 2 years, it was again missed because the data wasn't interpreted by a professional or an expert. And this is something that happens constantly. The best way I like to take people through how we've changed the way mineral and ground stability risk is identified is that if you've got a piece of paper and you put it in front of you, and you've got a pen, and you just put lots of dots on that piece of paper, then if you all of those dots equal data, and data is fantastic, but it's useless unless you can interpret it. So all those dots on the paper that you just put down, there are gaps in between every single one, and in ground stability mineral extraction risk, those gaps have never, until Terrafirma, been plugged by an expert interpretation. In contaminated land, Argyle did that. Argyle did that for contaminated land. In flood, JVA built predictive flood modelling for flood risk, which filled those gaps. In ground stability mineral extraction risk, that hasn't happened, and that's what Terrafirma have done. For example, in the COM29M, it provides information based on data for coal, and it provides information based on just subsidence claims information for Cheshire brine, but it doesn't provide information or interpretation on coal or brine, and it doesn't provide information or interpretation on any of the other mining and mineral extraction risks that occur in association with coal mining. Coal mining is not just, it hasn't just been coal mining in the coal field, there's been dozens of other types of mineral extraction, but yet they're not picked up on the COM29M, and therefore the risk is entirely missed in the conveyancing planning development process. The Cheshire brine one's interesting. If you get a report back that says, and in the Cheshire area that says there has been no substance claim on the property, does that mean the property is at risk? Or you have absolutely no idea. Of course, the property may be at severe risk, but just never had a substance claim. So, the whole point of this is that we provide a conclusion and a practical, site-specific, hazard-specific conclusion recommendation for the first time. In terms of present and planned impact, I'm running a little bit over time, so I'll just quickly go through these. Mines and minerals, present impact in mineral extraction and planned mineral planning permissions is becoming a huge issue in high-value resi, commercial and land conveyancing and land acquisition. It's something that I provide an entire another CPD on. It's very different in its impact, but just as severe, potentially severe. It's something that you really do have to understand, especially acting as a commercial solicitor. We work very closely with top UK commercial firms across the country to provide information and risk assessment around mines and minerals and mineral planning permissions. In terms of the slowing and halting development work, it's becoming a big issue now, as some of the points in this slide are made. And again, hopefully, InfoTrack and Bronwyn will provide you this information after the webinar finishes, so you can actually have a look at this and go through some of the case studies around it. But if you're interested, please get in contact with me, and we can go through it in a bit more detail. So identifying the risk, I've kind of gone through this in a little in some detail already. What's the current legislation and guidance? As a conveyancer, you may be sitting there saying, if the lender isn't asking for it, why am I doing it? There's two reasons why you should absolutely be doing this. The first thing is that the lender does already require it. The lender does already make specific stipulation that this level of risk assessment is undertaken. The only difference is they do not state where. They do not state where, and the reason being is because just like you, they have no idea where this risk is. So this is something that should be done. It's made in this, within the CML and the Law and Conveyancing Handbook, it's stated that it should be done in the Land Handbook. In terms of non-coal mining, nothing's done currently, and this is why it should be. Coal mining covers, the 129M covers coal, but on data. Terrafirma coal cover all mining, past, present, and planned, with data and interpretation. All the data that is in the 129M, all the data that's in around stability report and environmental report, we hold, we have extra, and we do more with it. So it's really important. The other point of view is that from an information perspective, it's absolutely essential a client has this information before informing, before making an informed decision on buying a property. Going back to the how we interpret data, this kind of, hopefully you'll have seen this before. Your client's property with rings, radii around that property, historically ground stability has been based around a distance matrix, risk matrix, because there's no interpretation. So if something falls within 50 meters or 100 or 250, that's how risk assessment is based, and then generalized conclusions come off that. For example, a moderate high risk in ground stability would trigger go and get a surveyor to have a look at it. That's where Terrafirma are very different. We can provide exact conclusions based on, for example, if it's a 12-story flat in a building, or if it's a 1950s property that has large area of land and small dwelling. All of these things are taken into consideration when we look at risk assessment. So we plug the gaps with our interpretation and extra data. So how did Terrafirma go about providing these solutions to the conveyancing and planning and development industry and sector? First and foremost, as conveyancers, you need to understand where the risk is. So we built a platform which identifies where in the UK the risk is, what the risk is from, and what to do next. So we built TerraSearch, which tells you instantly what that risk is. And I'm hoping, I'm pretty sure in the next couple of weeks and months, we'll be integrating with InfoTrack, so this service will be provided to you through them. It will either come back with a no risk, or it will come back with a risk. For example, if you bought a property in northeast or southwest London, it would come back with a no risk, because we've identified that there's no risk for mineral extraction there, so you don't have to worry about it. What it will provide you with is an level of indemnity cover through our terms and conditions, which is like no other. So it's like no other in Continental IM can offer. It includes 10 million PI on any one claim, which can be relied upon by all parties in the transaction, including the lender, you, and your clients. So it applies to all residential and commercial property. It's instantly generated, includes that insurance policy, and it provides that tailored certification that there's no risk there, and which can be put with the title deeds to show that there's no risk attached to that property when it comes to underground mineral extraction. Very, very important product, a service and search that's becoming very, very important now, particularly within the London area. And you will start to see this become much more common in terms of lenders requesting it. If a potential risk comes back, which it will, and particularly in areas that you may not even associate with mining before, as we've gone through today, if it comes back, there is a reason it has come back. It's not there to make money, it's there to inform you and your client and ensure that you're covered. If it's in South East London, for example, you need to do this report. If it's in Bradford or if it's in Leeds, you need to do our report so that every single type of mineral extraction is covered and assessed. It will provide you with information on whether you need to get a assessed report, which is our trademark product, or our brand new CON29M compliant coal report. If you get the assessed, it includes the CON29M report in it, so it includes every bit of information you can get from the Coal Authority CON29M in this report. It's manually and professionally assessed, so like I said, it's site-specific and hazard-specific in its conclusions, and it's backed by, again, by that 10 million PI cover. This product does everything it needs to do to ensure your client's informed. It looks at every single form of mineral extraction, past, present and planned, including fracking, including mineral planning permissions. Everything is within that report. It has two conclusions so that we can pass lots of properties based on the fact that, considering its ongoing current use, it can have one conclusion, and then if you're going to develop it, it's a second conclusion based on the risk that might be present there. The other products which might be recommended, and this is obviously where the coal areas are, is the coal and coal extra. Now, coal extra is a direct replacement for the CON29M. The biggest difference is that includes better cover and interpretation of data, whereas the CON29M does not provide that. The coal extra is a really important report for you as conveyancers because it is exactly the same as the CON29M. However, it flags where the additional non-coal mining risk is and provides that information back to your client so they can make a decision on whether they want to increase and pay the difference to get the assessed report, which covers all mineral extraction. So you've done your due diligence because you provided them with a report that covers all mineral extraction, and the client can then make a decision. If, and again, really important for you as a conveyancer, if there's no other non-coal mining risk identified, we provide you with the assured £10 million indemnity, so that you are then covered for both coal and non-coal within one report. Okay, so it's really, really important. It's something that we've worked very, very closely with conveyancers to develop that report, so that it provides that level of cover and information and interpretation that you need. This is how it kind of works. No risk assured indemnity. Risk identified as either assessed, coal or coal extra. We would recommend if you're going to look at the coal report, you get the coal extra so you have that cover, and the client can make the decision then to upgrade to assess and pay the difference to assess. Assess is the trademark standard, our trademark product, and provides all of the information within it that you need. In the case where the further action is required, which there will be some cases where this is required, we will then provide all of the follow-on services that you need. We don't put our hands up and say, sorry, we've found a risk, we will back down now, you need to go, we provide all of those follow-on services that you need, which can include insurance, bespoke insurance policies, it could include site investigation, it could include remediation, advice on what to do next, and so on. Terrafirma, we are not a faceless beast. We're a very accessible and open organisation that's happy to help in any way we possibly can, and that includes supporting materials. So if it's client care letters or if it's information on how to use the products and how the client can understand them, case studies for your local area, please just get in touch and let us know. Please complete. So I'm going to hand you back to Bronwyn now, and thank you very much for listening today. I hope you've learned something new. And I really hope that this is something that you'll take away and you will hopefully act upon and understand the risks that I took you through. Like I said, it's not something that you're going to go away from today and never hear about again. So thanks very much for listening, and I'll hand you back to Bronwyn. So thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Tom. A very informative presentation today. Now, if you're using InfoTrack, we provide all the searches shown today, and if you'd like any of these added to your pack, please let your account manager know. I'll send through the slides this afternoon, and if you require a certificate of attendance for your records, please let me know by return email. There will also be a short survey when you log out, and we really appreciate your input as it helps to define future content. Thank you for your time today, everyone, and your feedback. I look forward to welcoming you to our next webinar.